In the wilderness, Beth Arba, Medin, Sibkah, Nipshan, and the city of Salt, and En-gedi, 6 towns and their villages. Judah could not dislodge the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem to this day. And the Jebusites lived there with the people of Judah.
Joshua chapter 16. The allotment for Joseph began at the Jordan, east of the springs of Jericho, and went up from there through the desert into the hill country of Bethel. It went on from Bethel, that is Luz, crossed over to the territory of the Arkites in Athrah, descending westward to the territory of the Japhletites, as far as the region of lower Beth Horon and on to Gezer, ending at the Mediterranean Sea. So Manasseh and Ephraim, the descendants of Joseph, received their inheritance. This was the territory of Ephraim according to its clans. The boundary of their inheritance went from Adar in the east to upper Beth Horon and continued to the Mediterranean Sea. From Michmath on the north, it curved eastward to Tanah Shalom, passing by it to Jonah on the east. Then it went down from Jonah to Ataroth and Nahara, touching Jericho, and came out at the Jordan. From Tapah, the border went west to the Kanah ravine and ended at the Mediterranean Sea. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the Ephraimites, according to its clans. It also included all the towns and their villages that were set aside for the Ephraimites within the inheritance of the Manassites. They did not dislodge the Canaanites living in Gezer. To this day, the Canaanites live among the people of Ephraim, but are required to do forced labor. This was the allotment for the tribe of Manasseh as Joseph's firstborn, that is, from Machir, Manasseh's firstborn. Machir was the ancestor of the Gileadites, who had received Gilead and Bashan because the Machirites were great soldiers. So this allotment was for the rest of the people of Manasseh, the clans of Abizir, Helek, Azrael, Shechem, Hefer, and Shemitah. These are the other male descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, by their clans. Now, Zelophehad, son of Hefer, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons but only daughters, whose names were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tisra. They went to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders and said, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our relatives." So Joshua gave them an inheritance along with the brothers of their father, according to the Lord's command. Manasseh's share consisted of 10 tracts of land besides Gilead and Bashan east of the Jordan. Because the daughters of the tribe of Manasseh received an inheritance among the sons, the land of Gilead belonged to the rest of the descendants of Manasseh. The territory of Manasseh extended from Asher to Michmetah, east of Shechem. The boundary ran southward from there to include the people living at En-Tapah. Manasseh had the land of Tapah, but Tapah itself on the boundary of Manasseh belonged to the Ephraimites. Then the boundary continued south to the Kanah ravine. There were towns belonging to Ephraim, lying among the towns of Manasseh. But the boundary of Manasseh was the northern side of the ravine and ended at the Mediterranean Sea. On the south, the land belonged to Ephraim, on the north to Manasseh. The territory of Manasseh reached the Mediterranean Sea and bordered Asher on the north and Issachar on the east. When Issachar and Asher, Manasseh also had Beth-shan, Eblam, and the people of Dor, Endor, and Tanat, and Megiddo, together with their surrounding settlings, the third in the list of Naphath. Yet the Manassites were not able to occupy these towns, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that region. However, when the Israelites grew stronger, they substituted the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not drive them out completely. The people of Joseph said to Joshua, "Why have you given us only one allotment and one portion for an inheritance? We are a numerous people, and the Lord has blessed us abundantly." "If you are so numerous," Joshua answered, "if the hill country of Ephraim is too small for you, go up into the forest and clear land for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephites." The people of Joshua replied, "The hill country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who live in the plain have chariots filled with iron, both those in Bethshan and its settlements and those in the valley of Jezreel." But Joshua said to the tribes of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, "You are numerous and very powerful. You will have not only one allotment, but the forested hill country as well. Clear it, and its farthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have chariots fitted with iron, and though they are strong, you can drive them out." Joshua chapter 18. The whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. The country was brought under their control, but there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. So Joshua said to the Israelites, "How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you? Appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and to write a description of it according to the inheritance of each. Then they will return to me. You are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to remain in its territory on the south of the tribes of Joseph in their territory on the north. After you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord our God. The Levites, however, did not get a portion among you, because the priestly service of the Lord is their inheritance, and Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan. Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it to them." As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua instructed them, "Go and make a survey of the land and write a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord." So the men left and went through the land. They wrote its description on a scroll, town by town, in 7 parts, and returned to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh. Joshua then cast lots for them in Shiloh in the presence of the Lord, and there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. The first lot came for the tribe of Benjamin according to its clans. Their allotted territory lay between the tribes of Judah and Joseph. On the north side, their boundary began at the Jordan, past the northern slope of Jericho, and headed west into the hill country, coming out at the wilderness of Beth-aven. From there, it crossed to the south slope of Luz, that is Bethel, and went down to Atoroth Adar, on the hill south of lower Beth-Horon. From the hill facing Beth-Horon on the south, the boundary turned south along the western side and came out at Kiriath Baal. This is Kiriath Jearim, a town of the people of Judah. This was the western side. The southern side began at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim on the west, and the boundary came out at the spring of the waters of Nephtah. The boundary went down to the foot of the hill facing the valley of Ben Hinnom, north of the valley of Rephaim. It continued down the Hinnom Valley along the southern slope of the Jebusite city and so to En-Rogel. It then curved north, went to En-Shemesh, continued to Jeloth, which faces the pass of Adamim, and ran down to the stone of Bahan, son of Reuben. It continued to the northern slope of Beth Arab and on down into the Arabah. It then went to the northern slope of Beth Haglah and came out at the northern bay of the Dead Sea, at the mouth of the Jordan in the south. This was the southern boundary. The Jordan formed the boundary of the eastern side. These were the boundaries that marked out the inheritance of the clans of Benjamin on all sides. The tribe of Benjamin, according to its clan, had the following towns: Jericho, Beth Haglah, Emek, Keziz, Beth Araba, Zimral, Bethel, Avi, Parah, Afrah, Kephar, Amani, Ophni, and Geba, 12 towns and their villages. Gibbon, Ramon, Beeroth, Mizpah, Kephra, Mozah, Rekem, Irpil, Tarlah, Zelah, Halef, and Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem. Geba and Karath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin from its clans.
The second lot came out for the tribe of Simeon, according to its clans. Their inheritance lay within the territory of Judah. It included Beersheba, or Sheba, Moladah, Hazar Shual, Bela, Ezim, El Tolad, Bethel, Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Makabath, Hazar Shua, Beth Lebah, and Sharuhim, 13 towns and their villages. Ain, Rimmon, Ether, Eshon, 4 towns and their villages. And all of the villages, these towns, as far as Be'elabir, that's Ramah and the Negev. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the Simeonites according to its clans. The inheritance of the Simeonites was taken from the share of Judah, because Judah's portion was more than they needed. So the Simeonites received their inheritance within the territory of Judah. The allotment for Zebulun. The third lot came up for Zebulun according to its clans. The boundary of their inheritance went as far as Serib, going west. It ran to Merilah, touched Debashith, and extended to the ravine near Jokneam. It turned east from Sarid toward the sunrise to the territory of Kislow, Tabor, and went on to Debereth and up to Japhniah. Then it continued eastward to Gath-Hepher and Eth-Kazim, and it came out at Rimmon and turned toward Neah. There the boundary went around on the north to Hanathion and ended at the valley of Iftah-El. Included were Katah, Nahalil, Shimron, Adilah, and Bethlehem. There were 12 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of Zebulun, according to its clans. The allotment of Issachar. The fourth lot came out for Issachar, according to its clans. Their territory included Jezreel, Kesluoth, Shunem, Ephraim, Shion, Anatharoth, Rebith, Keshion, Ibez, Remeth, En-Ganim, En-Hadah, and Beth Pazez. The boundary touched Tabor, Shahazuma, and Beth Shemeth, and ended at the Jordan, where there were 16 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Issachar, according to its clans. The allotment of Asher. The fifth lot came out for the tribe of Asher, according to its clans. Their territory included Helkath, Hali, Betan, Akshaph, Al-Malek, Amad, and Mishael. On the west of on the west on the west of the boundary touched Carmel and Shihor, Iblimeth. It then turned eastward. Beth Dagon touched Zebulun in the valley of Ifta-el and went north to Beth Emek and Neiel, passing Kabul on the left. It went to Abdon, Rehob, Haman, and Cana, as far as the greater Sidon. The boundary then turned back toward Ramah and went to the fortified city of Tyre, turned toward Hosa, and came out at the Mediterranean Sea in the region of Akzib. Umah, Aphek, Repho, there were 22 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Asher according to its clans, the allotment for Naphtali. The sixth lot came out for Naphtali according to its clans. Their boundaries went from Haleph and the large tree in Zenium, passing Admi-Nekeb and Jabneel to Lechim and ending at the Jordan. The boundary ran west through Esnoth Tabar and came out at Hukah. It touched Zebulun on the south. Asher went on the west, and the Jordan on the east. The fortified towns were Ziddim, Zir, Hamath, Rakath, Kinnereth, Admah, and Ramahazar, Kadesh, Edrei, and Hazor, Iron, Migdal, El, Horam, Beth Anath, and Beth Shemesh. There were 19 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Naphtali, according to its clans. Allotment for Dan. The seventh lot came out for the tribe of Dan, according to its clans. The territory of their inheritance included Zorah, Eshtaol, Ir-Shemesh, Shalalabin, Ejalon, Ithalah, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, El-Keteh, Gibbethon, Behalath, Jehud, Ben-Abarak, Gath, Rimmon, Me, Jarkon, and Rekon, with their area facing Joppa. When the territory of the Danites was lost to them, they went up and attacked Leshem and took it and put it to the sword and occupied it. They settled in Leshem and named it Dan after their ancestor. These towns and their villages were inheritance of the tribe of Dan, according to its clans. Allotment for Joshua. When they had finished dividing the land into its allotted portion, the Israelites gave Joshua, the son of Nun, an inheritance among them, as the Lord had commanded. They gave him the town he asked for, Timnath-Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim, and built up the town and settled there. These are the territories that Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel assigned by lot at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting And so they finished dividing the land. Cities of refuge. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Tell the Israelites to designate cities of refuge, as I instructed through Moses. So anyone who kills a person accidentally and unintentionally may flee there and find protection from the avenger of blood. When they flee to one of these cities, they are to stand at the entrance of the city gate and state their case before the elders of that city. Then the elders are to admit the fugitive into their city and provide a place to live among them. If the avenger of blood comes in pursuit, the elders must not surrender the fugitive, because the fugitive killed their neighbor unintentionally and without malice aforethought. They are to stay in that city until they have stood trial before the assembly and until the death of the high priest who is serving at that time. Then they may go back to their own home in the town from which they fled." So they set apart Kadesh and Galilee in the hill country of Naphtali, Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, east of the Jordan, on the other side from Jericho. They designated Bezir in the wilderness on the plateau of the tribe of Reuben, Ramoth in Gilead in the tribe of Gad, and Golan in Bashan in the tribe of Manasseh. Any of the Israelites or any foreigner residing among them who killed someone accidentally could flee to these designated cities and not be killed by the avenger of blood prior to standing trial before the assembly.
Joshua chapter 21. Now the family heads of the Levites approached Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the other tribal families of Israel at Shiloh in Canaan, and said to them, "The Lord commanded through Moses that you give us towns to live in, with pasture lands for our livestock. So, as the Lord has commanded, the Israelites gave the Levites the following towns and pasture lands out of their own inheritance. The first lot came out for the Kohathites, according to their clans. The Levites, who were descendants of Aaron, the priest, were allotted 13 towns from the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. The rest of Kohath's descendants were allotted 10 towns from the clans of the tribes of Ephraim, Dan, and half of Manasseh. The descendants of Gershom were allotted 13 towns from the clans of the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the half-tribe of Manasseh and Bashan. The descendants of Merari, according to their clans, received 12 towns from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. So the Israelites allotted to the Levites these towns and their pasture lands as the Lord has commanded through Moses. From the tribes of Judah and Simeon, they allotted the following towns by name. These towns were assigned to the descendants of Aaron, who were from the Kohathite clans of the Levites, because the first lot fell to them. They gave them Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, with its surrounding pasture land in the hill country of Judah. Arba was the forefather of Anak, but the fields and the villages around the city they had given to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his possession. So to the descendants of Aaron, the priests, they gave Hebron, a city of refuge from one accused of murder, Libnah, Jatir, Eshtemoa, Holon, Debir, Ain, Juttah, and Beth Shemesh, together with their pasture lands, 9 towns from these 2 tribes. And from the tribe of Benjamin they gave them Gibbon, Geba, Anathoth, and Almon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. The total number of towns for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, came to 13, together with their pasture lands. The rest of Kohathite clans of the Levites were allotted towns from the tribe of Ephraim. In the hill country of Ephraim, they were given Shechem, a city of refuge from one accused of murder, and Gezer, Kibzam, and Beth Horon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. Also from the tribe of Dan, they received Eltekeh, Gibbethon, Ajalon, and Gath-Rimmon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From half the tribe of Manasseh, they received Tanach and Gath-Rimmon, together with their pasture lands, 2 towns. All these 10 towns and their pasture lands were given to the rest of the Kohathite clans. The Levite clans of the Gershonites were given from the half-tribe of Manasseh, Golan and Bashan, a city of refuge from one accused of murder, and Be-Eshtrah, together with their pasture lands, 2 towns. From the tribe of Issachar, Kishon, Debirath, Jarmuth, and En-Ganim, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Asher, Mishal, Abdon, Helkath, and Rahab, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Naphtali, Kadesh, Jokneam, Karta, Dimnah, and Nahalah, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Reuben, Bezer, Jezah, Kedemoth, and Mephanath, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Gad, Ramoth in Gilead, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, Mahanath, Heshbon and Gezer, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns in all. The total number of towns allotted to the Merarite clans, who were the rest of the Levites, came to 12. The towns of the Levites in the territory held by the Israelites were 48 in all, together with their pasture lands. Each of these towns had pasture lands surrounding it. This was true for all these towns. So the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of all the Lord's good promises is Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled.
Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, "You have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded for a long time now. To this very day you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried out the mission of the Lord your God gave you. Now the Lord your God has given them the rest as he promised. Return to your homes and homeland that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. But be very careful to keep the commandments and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul." Then Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their homes. To the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses gave land in Bashan, and to the other half of the tribe, Joshua gave land on the west side of the Jordan, along with their fellow Israelites. When, when Joshua sent them home, he blessed them, saying, "Return to your homes with your great wealth, with large herds of livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and great quantities of clothing, and divide the plunder from your enemies with your fellow Israelites." So the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in Canaan and returned to Gilead, their own land, which they had acquired according to the command of the Lord through Moses. When they came to Galiloth, near Jordan in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. And when the Israelites heard that they had built an altar on the border of Canaan at Galiloth near Jordan on the Israelite side, the whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. So the Israelites sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the land of Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. With him they sent 10 of the chiefs, one of each of the tribes of Israel, each the head of a family division among the Israelite clan. When they went to Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, they said to them, "The whole assembly of the Lord says, how could you break faith with God, with the God of Israel like this? How could you turn away from the Lord and build yourself an altar in rebellion against him now? Was not the sin of Peor enough for us? Up to this day we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin, even though a plague fell upon the community of the Lord. And you are now turning away from the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, tomorrow he will be angry with the whole community of Israel. If the land you possess is defiled, come over to the Lord's land, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and share the land with us. But do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building an altar for yourselves, other than the altar of the Lord our God." When Achan, the son of Zerah, was unfaithful in regard to the devoted things, did not the wrath come on the whole community of Israel? He was not the only one who died for his sin. Then Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the clans of Israel, "The mighty one God, the Lord, the mighty one God, the Lord, he knows, and let Israel know if this has been in rebellion or disobedience to the Lord. Do not spare us this day. If we have built our own altar to turn away from the Lord and to offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it, may the Lord himself call us to account. No, we did not. We did it for fear that someday your descendants might say to ours, 'What do you have to do with the Lord, the God of Israel?' The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You Reubenites and Gadites, you have no share in the Lord, so your descendants might cause ours to stop fearing the Lord. That is why we said, let us get ready and build an altar, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you and the generations that follow, that we will worship the Lord at his sanctuary with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. Then in the future of our descendant, in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to ours, you have no share in the Lord. And we said, if they ever say this to us or to our descendants, we will answer, look at the replica of the Lord's altar, which our ancestors built not for burnt offerings or sacrifices, but as a witness between us and you. Far be it from us to rebel against the Lord and turn away from him today by building an altar for burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrifices other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. When Phinehas the priest and the leaders of the community and the heads of the clans of the Israelites heard what Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, said to Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is with us, because you have not been unfaithful to the Lord in this matter. Now you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's hand. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and the leaders returned to Canaan and from their meeting with the Reubenites and the Gadites in Gilead, and reported to the Israelites, they were glad to hear the report and praise God and they talked no more about going to war against them who devastated the country where the Reubenites and the Gadites lived. And the Reubenites and the Gadites gave the altar this name, a witness between us that the Lord is God.
Joshua chapter 23. After a long time had passed and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, and officials, and said to them, I am very old. You yourselves have been everything the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I have allotted as an inheritance for your tribes all the land of the nations that remain, the nations I conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea in the west. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land, as the Lord your God promised you. Be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of law of Moses, without turning aside to the right or to the left. Do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Do not invoke the names of their gods or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. The Lord has driven out before you great and powerful nations. To this day, no one has been able to withstand you. One of you routs 1,000 because the Lord your God fights for you, just as he promised. So be very careful to love the Lord your God. But if you turn away and ally yourselves with the survivors of these nations that remain among you. And if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, they will become snares and traps for you, whips on your backs and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land which the Lord God has given you. Now I am about to go the way of all the earth. You know with all your heart and soul that no one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled, not one has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he has threatened until the Lord your God has destroyed you from the good land he has given you. If you violate the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go serve other gods and bow down to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly perish from the good land he has given you. Joshua chapter 24. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said. Long ago your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country to Seir, to Esau, but Jacob and his family went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your people out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the wilderness for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them from before you, and you took possession of their land. When Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam, so he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Gershites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. But I gave them into your hands. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you, also the 2 Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow. So I gave you a land on which you did not toil, and cities you did not build, and you live in them and eat from vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Then the people answered, "Far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve our gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our parents up out of Egypt, from that land of slavery, and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove before us all the nations, including the Amorites, who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord, because he is our God." Joshua said to the people, "You are not able to serve the Lord. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, he will turn and bring disaster on you and make an end of you after he has been good to you." But the people said to Joshua, "No, we will serve the Lord." Then Joshua said, "You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord." "Yes, we are witnesses," they replied. "Now then," said Joshua, "throw away the foreign gods that were among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel." And the people said to Joshua, "We will serve the Lord our God and obey him." On that day, Joshua, "We will serve the Lord our God and obey him." On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he reaffirmed for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. "See," he said to all the people, "this stone will be a witness against you. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to you. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God." Then Joshua dismissed the people, each to their own inheritance. After these things, Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlined him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem in the tract of land that Jacob brought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became an inheritance of Joseph's descendants. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died and was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim.
After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, who of us is to go up first to fight against the Canaanites? The Lord answered, "Judah shall go up, and I have given the land into their hands." The men of Judah then said to the Simeonites, their fellow Israelites, "Come up with us into the territory allotted to us to fight against the Canaanites. We in turn will go with you into yours." So the Simeonites went with them. When Judah attacked, the Lord gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they struck down 10,000 men at Bezek. It was there that they found Adoni-Bezek and fought against him, putting to rout the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Adoni-Bezek fled, but they chased him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Then Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and their big toes cut off have picked up scraps underneath my table. Now God has paid me back for what I did to them." They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. The men of Judah attacked Jerusalem also and took it. They put the city to the sword and set it on fire. After that, Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites living in the hill country, the Negev, and the western foothills. They advanced against the Canaanites living in Hebron, formerly called Kiriath Arba, and defeated Sheshai, Ahinmen, and Talmai. From there, they advanced against the people living in Debir, formerly Kiriath Sephir. And Caleb said, "I will give my daughter Aksah in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiriath-Sephir. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, took it. So Caleb gave his daughter Aksa to him in marriage. One day when she came to Othniel, she urged him to ask her father for a field. When, when she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What can I do for you?" She replied, "Do me a special favor. Since you have given me the land in the Negev, give me also the springs of water." So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. The descendants of Moses' father-in-law, the Kenite, went up from the city of palms with the people of Judah to live among the inhabitants of the desert of Judah and the Negev near Arad. Then the men of Judah went with the Simeonites, their fellow Israelites, and attacked the Canaanites living in Sepharth, and they totally destroyed it. The city, therefore, it was called Hormah. Judah also took Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, each city with its territory. The Lord was with the men of Judah, and they took possession of the hill country, but they were unable to drive out the people from the plains because they had chariots fitted with iron. As Moses had promised, Hebron was given to Caleb, who drove from it the three sons of Anak. The Benjamites, however, did not drive out the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. To this day, the Jebusites live there with the Benjamites. Now the tribe of Joseph attacked Bethel. The Lord was with them when they sent men to spy out Bethel, formerly called Luz. The spies saw a man coming out from the city, and they said to him, "Show us how to get into the city, and we will see that you are treated well." So he showed them, and they put the city to the sword, but spared the man and his whole family. He then went to the land of the Hittites, where he built a city and called it Luz, which is its name to this day. But Manasseh did not drive out the people of Bethshan, or Tanakh, or Dor, or Eblim, or Megiddo, and their surrounding settlements, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that land. When Israel became strong, they pressed the Canaanites into forced labor, but never drove them out completely. Nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer, but the Canaanites continued to live there among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the Canaanites living in Kitron or Nahalal. So these Canaanites lived among them, but Zebulun did subject them to forced labor. Nor did Asher drive out those living in Echo or Sudden or Elab or Axib or Helbah or Aphek or Rehob. The Asherites lived among the Canaanites, inhabitants of that land, because they did not drive them out. Neither did Naphtali drive out those living in Beth Shemesh or Beth Anath. But the Naphtalites too lived among the Canaanites, inhabitants of the land, and those living in Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath became forced laborers for them. The Amorites confined the Danites to the hill country, and not allowing them to come down into the plains. And the Amorites were determined also to hold out in Mount Heres, Ajalon, and Shalbim. But when the powers of the tribes of Joseph increased, they too were pressed into forced labor. The boundary of the Amorites was from Scorpion Pass to Selah and beyond.
Judges chapter 2. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land I swore to give to your ancestors. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? And I have also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. When the angel of the Lord had spoken these things to all the Israelites, the people wept aloud, and they called that place Bochim. There they offered sacrifices to the Lord. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to their own inheritance. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlined him and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the peoples around them. They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord gave them into the hands of raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges, who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostitute themselves to other gods and worship them. They quickly turned from the ways of their ancestors who had been obedient to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies as long as the judge lived. For their Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I ordained for their ancestors and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel and see whether they will keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their ancestors did. The Lord had allowed those nations to remain. He did not drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua.
These are the nations the Lord left to test all those Israelites who had not experienced any of the wars in Canaan. He did this only to teach warfare to the descendants of Israel who had not yet had previous battle experience. The 5 rulers of the Philistines, all the Canaanites, the Sidonians, and the Hivites living in Lebanon, living in the Lebanon mountains, from Mount Baal Hamon to Lebo Hamath. They were left to the test the Israelites to see whether they would obey the Lord's commands, which he had given them and their ancestors through Moses. The Israelites lived among the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and the Jebusites. They took their daughters in marriage and gave their own daughters to their sons and served their gods. Othniel. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel, so he sold them into the hands of Cushan Rishathaim, the king of Aram, Naharaim, to whom the Israelites were subject for 8 years. But when they cried out to the Lord, he raised for them a deliverer, Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, who saved them. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him so that he became Israel's judge and went to war. The Lord gave Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram, into the hands of Othniel, who overpowered them. So the land had peace for 40 years until Othniel, son of Kenaz, died.
Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and because they did this evil, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel, getting the Ammonites and Amalekites to join him. Eglon came and attacked Israel, and they took possession of the city of palms. The Israelites were subject to Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years. Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he gave them a deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man, the son of Gera the Benjamite. The Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Ehud had made a double-edged sword about a cubit long, which he strapped to his right thigh under his clothing. He presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was a very fat man. After Ehud had presented the tribute, he sent on their way those who had carried it. But on reaching the stone images near Gilgal, he himself went back to Eglon and said, "Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you." The king said to his attendants, "Leave us," and they all left. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his palace and said, "I have a message from God for you." As the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into the king's belly. Even the handle sank in after the blade, and his bowels discharged. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. Then Ehud went out to the porch. He shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. After he had gone, the servants came and found the doors of the upper room locked. They said, "He must be relieving himself in the inner room of the palace." They waited to the point of embarrassment, but when he did not open the doors of the room, they took a key and unlocked them. There they saw their lord fall to the floor dead. While they waited, Ehud got away. He passed by the stone images and escaped to Seirah. When he arrived there, he blew a trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went down with him from the hills, for with him leading them. "Follow me," he ordered, "for the Lord has given Moab, your enemy, into your hands." So they followed him down and took possession of the fords of the Jordan that led to Moab. They allowed no one to cross over. At that time, they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all vigorous and strong. Not one escaped. That day Moab was made subject to Israel, and the land had peace for 80 years. After Ehud came Shagar, son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel.
Judges 4. Después de la muerte de Ad, los hijos de Israel volvieron a hacer lo malo ante los ojos de Jehová. Y Jehová los vendió en mano de Javín, rey de Canaán, el cual reinó en Azor. Y el capitán de su ejército se llamaba Sisara, el cual habitaba en Haroset Goim. Entonces los hijos de Israel clamaron a Jehová, ¿por qué aquel tiene 900 carros afuera y había oprimido con crueldad a los hijos de Israel por 20 años? Gobernaba en aquel tiempo a Israel una mujer, Débora, profetisa, mujer de Lapitod, y acostumbraba sentarse bajo la palmera de Débora, entre Rama y Betel, en el monte de Ifrán, y los hijos de Israel subían a ella a juicio. Y ella envió a llamar a Barak, hijo de Abinome de Cedes de Niftali, y le dijo, ¿no te ha mandado Jehová Dios de Israel diciendo, ve junta a tu gente en el monte de Tabor y toma contigo 10,000 hombres de la tribu de Niftali y de la tribu de Zabulón? Y yo atraeré hacia ti a arroyo de Sison a Sisara, capitán de ejército de Javín, con sus carros y sus ejércitos, y lo entregaré en tus manos. Barak le respondió, si tú fueras conmigo, yo iré, pero si no fueras conmigo, no iré. Ella dijo, iré contigo, mas no será tuya la gloria de la jornada que emprendes, porque en mano de mujer venderé Jehová a Sisara. Y levantóse Débora, fue con Barak y Cedes. Y junto Barak y Zabulón y a Neftali en Cedes, y subió con 10,000 hombres a su mando, y Débora subió con él. Y Eber, señor de los hijos de Obab, suegro de Moisés, se había apartado de los sinios y había plantado sus tiendas en el valle de Zanim, que está junto a Cedes. Vinieron pues a Sisara las nuevas de que Barak, hijo de Abinom, había subido el monte de Tabor. Y reunió Sisara todos sus carros, 900 carros cerrados, con todo el pueblo con él estaba, desde Haroset Goim hasta el arroyo de Sison. Entonces Débora dijo a Barak, levántate, porque este es el día en que Jehová ha entregado a Sisara en tus manos. No ha salido Jehová delante de ti. Y Barak diciendo del monte de Tabor, y 10,000 hombres en pos de él. Y Jehová quebrantó a Sisara, a todos sus carros y todos sus ejércitos a filo de espada delante de Barak. Y Sisara diciendo del carro, y huyó a pie. Mas Barak siguió los carros y el ejército hasta Haroset Goim, y todo el ejército de Sisara cayó a filo de espada, hasta no cuidar ni uno. Y Sisara huyó a pie a la tienda de Jael, mujer de Eber, señor, porque había paz entre Javín, rey de Azor, y la casa de Eber, señor. Y saliendo Jael a recibir a Sisara, le dijo, ven, señor mío, ven a mí, no tengas temor. Y él vino a ella a la tienda, y ella le cubrió con una manta. Y él le dijo, te ruego mis dedos de beber un poco de agua, pues tengo sed. Y ella abrió un odre de leche y le dio de beber, y le volvió a cubrir. Y él le dijo, está a la puerta de la tienda, y si alguien viniere y te preguntaré diciendo, ¿hay aquí alguno? Tú responderás que no. Pero a él, mujer de Eber, tomó un estaca de la tienda, y poniendo un mazo en su mano, se le acercó calladamente y le metió la estaca para los sienes y le enclavó en la tierra, pues él estaba cargado de sueño y cansado, y así murió. Y siguiendo Barak y Sisara, Jael salió a recibirlo y le dijo, ven, te mostraré al varón que tú buscas. Y él entró donde ella estaba, y he aquí Sisara yació muerto con la estaca por la sien. Así abatió Dios aquel día a Javín, rey de Canaán, delante de los hijos de Israel. Y la mano de los hijos de Israel fue endureciéndose más y más contra Javín, rey de Canaán, hasta que los destruyeron.
Judges chapter 5. On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinah, sang this song. When the prince in Israel take the lead, when the people willingly offer themselves, praise the Lord. Hear this, you kings, listen, you rulers. I, even I, will sing to the Lord. I will praise the Lord, the God of Israel, in song. When you, Lord, went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down water. The mountains quaked before the Lord, the one of Sinai, before the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, in the highways were abandoned, travelers took to winded paths. Villagers in Israel would not fight. They held back until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. God chose new leaders when war came to the city gates, but not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with Israel's prince, with the willing volunteers among the people. Praise the Lord. You who ride on white donkeys, sitting on your saddle blankets, and you who walk among the roads, consider the voice of the singers at the watering places. They recite the victories of the Lord, the victories of his villagers in Israel. Then the people of the Lord went back to the city gates. Wake up, Deborah. Wake up, break out in song. Arise, Barak. Take captive your captive son of Abinah. The remnant of the nobles came down. The people of the Lord came down to me against the mighty. Some came from Ephraim, whose roots were in Amalek. Benjamin was with people who followed you. From Machir, captains came down. From Zebulun, those who bear a commander's staff. The prince of Issachar were with Deborah. Yes, Issachar was with Barak, sent under the command into the valley. In the district of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Why did you stay among the sheep pens and to hear the whistling for the flocks? In the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan, why did he linger by the ships? Asher remained on the coast and stayed in his coves. The people of Zebulun risked their lives and did Naphtali on the terraced fields. Kings came, they fought. The kings of Canaan fought. At Tahanach, by the waters of Migdol, they took no plunder of silver. From the heavens the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away. The age-old river, the river Kishon. March on, my soul, be strong. Then thundered the horses' hooves, galloping goes his mighty steeds. Curse Meroz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse his people bitterly, because they did not come to help the Lord against the mighty. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, who blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him curdled milk. Her hand reached from the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. He struck Sisera, she crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he sank, he fell. There he lay. At her feet he sank, he fell. Where he sank, where he fell, dead. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice she cried out, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why is the clatter of his chariots delayed?" The wisest of her ladies answered her. Indeed, she keeps saying to herself, Are they not finding and dividing the spoils, a woman or two for each man? Colorful garments as plunder for Sisera, colorful garments embroidered, highly embroidered garments for my neck, all this as plunder. So may all your enemies perish, Lord, but may all who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength. Then the land had peace 40 years.
Los hijos de Israel hicieron lo malo ante los ojos de Jehová, y Jehová los entregó en mano de Madián por 7 años. Y la mano de Madián prevaleció contra Israel, y los hijos de Israel, por causa de los mandiantes, se hicieron cuevas en los montes y cavernas y lugares fortificados. Pues sucedía que cuando Israel había sembrado, subían los mandianitas y amalequitas, y los hijos de Oriente contra ellos subían a los atacaban. Y acampando contra ellos, destruían los frutos de la tierra hasta llegar a Gaza, y no dejaban que comer en Israel, ni ovejas, ni bueyes, ni asnos, porque sabían ellos y sus ganados, y venían con sus tiendas en grande multitud, como langostas, ellos y sus camellos eran innumerables. Así venían a la tierra para devastarla. De este modo empobrecía Israel en gran manera por causa de Madián, y los hijos de Israel clamaron a Jehová. Y cuando los hijos de Israel clamaron a Jehová y causa de los madianitas, Jehová envió a los hijos de Israel un varón profeta, el cual les dijo: así ha dicho Jehová Dios de Israel: yo os hice salir de Egipto y os saqué de la casa de servidumbre. Os libré de mano de los egipcios y de mano de todos los que os ofendieron, a los cuales eché delante de vosotros y os di su tierra. Y os dije: yo soy Jehová vuestro Dios. No temáis a los dioses de los amorreos, en cuya tierra habitáis, pero no habías obedecido a mi voz. Y vino el ángel de Jehová y se sentó debajo de la encina que está en Ofra, la cual era de Abiesirita, y su hijo Gedeón estaba sacudiendo el trigo en el lagar para esconderlo de los madianitas. Y el ángel de Jehová se le apareció y le dijo: Jehová está contigo, varón esforzado y valiente. Y Gedeón le respondió: Señor mío, sí, Jehová está con nosotros, porque no ha sobrevenido todo esto, y donde están todas sus maravillas que nosotros padres nos han contado, diciendo: no nos sacó Jehová de Egipto, y ahora Jehová nos ha desamparado y nos ha entregado en mano de los madianitas. Y mirándole a Jehová le dijo: ve con esta tu fuerza y salvarás a Israel de la mano de los madianitas. ¿No te envió yo? Entonces le respondió: Señor mío, ¿con qué salvaré yo a Israel? He aquí mi familia es pobre en Manases, y yo el menor en la casa de mi padre. Jehová le dijo: ciertamente yo estaré contigo, y derrotarás a las madianitas como a un solo hombre. Y él respondió: yo te ruego hasta que vuelva a ti, y saqué mi ofrenda y la ponga delante de ti. Y él respondió: yo esperaré hasta que vuelvas. Y entrando Gedeón preparó un cabrito y panes sin levadura de un efa de harina, y puso la carne en su canastillo y el caldo en una olla, y sacándolo se lo presentó debajo de aquella encina. Entonces el ángel de Dios le dijo: toma la carne y los panes sin levadura y ponlos sobre esta peña, y vierte el caldo. Y él hizo así. El extendiendo el ángel de Jehová el báculo que tiene en su mano, tocó con la punta la carne y los panes sin levadura, y subió fuego de la peña el cual consumió la carne y los panes sin levadura. Y el ángel de Jehová desapareció de su vista. Viendo entonces Gideón que era el ángel de Jehová, dijo: Ah, Señor Jehová, que he visto a ángel de Jehová cara a cara. Pero Jehová le dijo: Paz a ti, no tengas temor, no morirás. Y edificó allí Gideón altar a Jehová. Yo lo llamo Jehová Salom, el cual permanece hasta hoy en Ofra de las Abiezeritas. Aconteció que la misma noche le dijo Jehová: Toma un toro de alto de tu padre, el segundo toro de 7 años, y derribe al altar de Baal que tu padre tiene, y corta también la imagen de Acera que esté junto a él, y edifica altar a Jehová tu Dios en la cumbre de esta penasco en lugar conveniente. Y tomando el segundo toro, sacrifícalo en holocausto con la madera de la imagen de Acera que habrás cortado. Entonces Gideón tomó Dios sobre de sus siervos e hizo como Jehová le dijo, mas temiendo hacerlo de día por la familia de su padre y por los hombres de la ciudad, lo hizo de noche. Por la mañana, cuando los de la ciudad se levantaron, he aquí que el altar de Baal estaba derribado y cortado la imagen de Acera que estaba junto a él. Y el segundo toro había sido ofrecido en holocausto sobre el altar edificado. Y se dijeron unos a otros: ¿Quién ha hecho esto? Y buscando e inquiriendo les dijeron: Gideón, hijo de Joás, lo ha hecho. Entonces los hombres de la ciudad dijeron a Joás: Saca a tu hijo para que muera, porque ha derribado el altar de Baal y ha cortado la imagen de Acera que estaba junto a él. Y Joás respondió a todos los que estaban junto a él: ¿Contenderías vosotros por Baal? ¿Defenderías su causa? Cualquiera que contienda por él, que muera esta mañana. Si es un Dios, contienda por sí mismo con el que derribó su altar. Aquel día Gedeón fue llamado Jerobal, esto es, contienda Baal contra él, por cuanto derribó su altar. Pero todos los madianitas y amalequitas y los del oriente se juntaron a una y pasando acamparon en el valle de Israel. Entonces el Espíritu de Jehová vino sobre Gideón, y cuando esto tocó el cuerno, los abiezeritas se reunieron con él. Y envió mensajeros por todos Manases, y ellos también se juntaron con él. Asimismo envió mensajeros a Aser, a Zabulón y a Neftali, los cuales salieron a encontrarles. Y Gideón dijo a Dios: Si has de salvar a Israel por mi mano, como has dicho, he aquí yo pondré un vellón de lana en la era, y si el rocío estuviera en el velón solamente, quedando seca toda la otra tierra, entonces entenderé que salvarás a Israel por mi mano, como lo has dicho. Y aconteció así, pues cuando se levantó de mañana, exprimió el vellón y sacó de el rocío un tazón lleno de agua. Mas Gideón dijo a Dios: No se enciende tu ira contra mí. Si aún hablaré esta vez, solamente probaré ahora otra vez con el vellón. Te ruego que solamente el vellón quedó seco y el rocío sobre la tierra. Y aquella noche lo hizo Dios así. Solo el vellón quedó seco y en toda la tierra hubo rocío.
Judges chapter 7. Early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, Anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say, 'This one shall go with you,' he shall go. But if I say, 'This one shall not go with you,' he shall not go." So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, "Separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink." 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, "With the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home." So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300, who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. Now the camp of Midian lay below him in the valley. During that night, the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Perah, and listen to what they are saying. Afterward, you will be encouraged to attack the camp." So he and Perah, his servant, went down to the outpost of the camp. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the other eastern people had settled in the valley, thick as locusts. Their camels could no more be counted than the sand on the seashore. Gideon arrived just as a man was telling a friend his dream. "I had a dream," he was saying. A round loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed. His friend responded, "This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hand." When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshiped. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches inside. "Watch me," he told them. "Follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, go exactly as I do. Do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" Gideon and the 100 men with them reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets and broke their jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew their trumpets and smashed the jars. Grasping the torches in their left hands and holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow, they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Beth Shittah toward Zerah, as far as the border of Abel Mahal near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and all of Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them as far as Beth Barah." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters of the Jordan as far as Beth Barah. They also captured 2 of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan.
Judges chapter 8. Pero los hombres de Efraín le dijeron, ¿qué es esto que has hecho con nosotros? Nos llamandados cuando habías a la guerra contra Madián, y le reconvinieron fuertemente. A los cuales se respondió, ¿Qué he hecho yo ahora comparado con vosotros? ¿No es el rebusco de Efraín mejor que la vendimia de Abiezer? Dios ha entregado en vuestras manos a Oreb y a Zeb, príncipes de Madián. ¿Y qué ha podido yo hacer comparado con vosotros? Entonces el enojo de ellos contra él se aplacó, llegó que él habló esta palabra. Y vino Gideón a Jordán, y pasó él y los 300 hombres que traían consigo, cansados más todavía persiguiendo. Y dijo a los de Socor: yo os ruego que diez a la gente que me sigue algunos bocados de pan, porque están cansados, y yo persigo a Zeba y a Zalmunna, reyes de Madián. Y los principales de Sucot respondieron: ¿están ya Zeba y Zalmunna en tu mano para que demos pan y tu ejército? Y Gideón dijo: cuán Jehová haya entregado en mi mano a Zeba y a Zalmunna, yo triaré vuestra carne con espinos y abrojos del desierto. De ahí subió al piñal y les dijo las mismas palabras. Y los del piñal le respondieron como habían respondido los de Socot. Y él habló también a los de piñal, diciendo: cuando yo vuelva en paz, derribaré esta torre. Y Zeba y Zalmunna estaban en Carcor, y con ellos su ejército como de 15,000 hombres, todos los que habían quedado de todo el ejército de los hijos del oriente, pues habían caído 120,000 hombres que sacaban espada. Subiendo pues Gideón por el camino de los que habitaban en tiendas al oriente de Nova y de Jogeba, atacó el campamento porque el ejército no estaba en guarda. El oyendo Zeba y Zalmunna, él los siguió y prendió a los reyes de Madián, Zeba y Zalmunna, y llenó de espanto a todo el ejército. Entonces Gideón, hijo de Joás, volvió de la batalla antes que el sol subiese, y tomó a un joven de los hombres de Sucot y le preguntó, y él le dio por escrito los nombres de los principales y de los ancianos de Sucot, 77 varones. Y entrando a los hombres de Sucot dijo: he aquí a Zeba y a Zalmunna, acerca de los cuales me dijiste diciendo: están ya en tu mano Zeba y Zalmunna, para que demos nosotros pan a tus hombres cansados. Y tomó a los ancianos de la ciudad, y espinos y abrojos del desierto, y castigó con ellos a los de Sucot. Asimismo derribó la torre de piñal y mató a los de la ciudad. Llegó, dijo a Zeba y Zalmunna: ¿qué aspecto tenían aquellos hombres que matáis en Tabor? Y ellos respondieron: como tú, así eran ellos, cada uno parecía hijo de rey. Y él dijo: mis hermanos eran hijos de mi madre. Vive Jehová, que si les hubieras conservado la vida, yo no os mataría. Y dijo a Jetar su primogénito: levántate y mátalos. Pero el joven no desenvainó su espada porque tenía temor, pues era aún muchacho. Entonces dijeron Zeba y Zalmunna: levántate tú y mátanos, porque como es el varón, tal es su valentía. Y Gideón se levantó y mató a Zeba y Zalmunna y todos los adornos de lunetas que sus camellos traían al cuello. Y los israelitas dijeron a Gideón: si nuestro Señor, tú y tu hijo y tu nieto, pues que nos has librado de mano de Madián. Mas Gideón respondió: no seré señor sobre vosotros, ni mi hijo os señorearía, Jehová señorearía sobre vosotros. Y les dijo Gideón: quiero haceros una petición, que cada uno me dé los zarcillos de su botín. Ellos respondieron, de buena gana te los daremos. Y deteniendo su manto, escuchó ahí a cada uno los zarcillos de su botín. Y fue el peso de los zarcillos de oro que él pidió, 1,700 ciclos de oro, sin las planchas y joyeles y vestidos de púrpura que traían los reyes de Madián, y sin los collares que traían sus camellos al cuello. Y Gadión hizo de ellos un ephod, y cual hizo guardar en su ciudad de Ofra, y todo Israel se prostituyó tras de ese ephod y aquel lugar, y fue tropezadero a Gadión y su casa. Así fue subyugado Madián delante de los hijos de Israel, y nunca más volvió a levantar cabeza. Y reposó la tierra 40 años en los días de Gedeón. Llegó Jerobal, hijo de Joás, fue y habitó en su casa. Y tuvo Gedeón 70 hijos que constituyeron su descendencia, porque tuvo muchas mujeres. También sus concubinas que estaban en Siquem del lío, él le dio un hijo y le puso por nombre Abimelech. Y murió Gedeón, hijo de Joás, en buena vejez, y fue sepultado en el sepulcro de su padre Joás en Ofra de los Abiseritas. Pero aconteció que cuando murió Gedeón, los hijos de Israel volvieron a prostituirse yendo tras los Baales, y escogieron por Dios a Balibiret. Y no se acordaron los hijos de Israel de Jehová, su Dios, que los había librado de todos sus enemigos en derredor. Ni se mostraron agradecidos con la casa de Jerobal, el cual es Gedeón, conforme a todo el bien que había hecho a Israel.
Judges chapter 9. Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to his mother's brothers in Shechem, and said to them and to all his mother's clan, ask all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all 70 of Jerubbaal's sons rule over you, or just one man. Remember, I am your flesh and blood. When the brothers repeated all this to the citizens of Shechem, they were inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is related to us. They gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal-berith, and Abimelech used it to hire reckless scoundrels who became his followers. He went to his father's home in Ophrah, and on one stone murdered his 70 brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, escaped by hiding. When all the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo gathered beside the great tree at the pillar in the Shechem to crown Abimelech king. When Jotham was told about this, he climbed up on the top of Mount Gerizim and shouted to them, listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. One day the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves. They said to the olive tree, be our king. But the olive tree answered, should I give up my oil, by which both gods and humans are honored, to hold sway over these trees? Next, the tree said to the fig tree, come and be our king. But the fig tree replied, should I give up my fruit, so good and sweet, to hold sway over the trees? Then the tree said to the vine, come and be our king. But the vine answered, should I give up my wine, which cheers both gods and humans, to hold sway over the trees? Finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, come and be our king. The thorn bush said to the trees, if you really want to anoint me king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, then let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Have you acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech king? Have you been fair to Jerubbaal and his family? Have you treated him as he deserves? Remember that my father fought for you and risked his life to rescue you from the hand of Midian. But today you have revolted against my father's family. You have murdered his 70 sons on a single stone and have made Abimelech, the son of his female slave, king over the citizens of Shechem because he is related to you. So have you acted honorably and in good faith toward Jerubbaal and his family today? If you have, may Abimelech be your joy, and may you be his too. But if you have not, let fire come from Abimelech and consume you, the citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo, and let fire come out from you, the citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo, and consume Abimelech. Then Jotham fled, escaping to Beer, and he lived there because he was afraid of his brother Abimelech. After Abimelech had governed Israel 3 years, God stirred up animosity between Abimelech and the citizens of Shem, so that they acted treacherously against Abimelech. God did this in order that the crime against Jerubbaal's 70 sons, the shedding of their blood, might be avenged on their brother Abimelech and on the citizens of Shechem, who had helped him murder his brothers. In opposition to him, these citizens of Shechem set men on the hilltops to ambush and rob everyone who passed by, and this was reported to Abimelech. Now Gal, son of Ebed, moved with his clan into Shechem, and its citizens put their confidence in him. After they had gone out into the fields and gathered the grapes and trodden them, they held a festival in the temple of their God. While they were eating and drinking, they cursed Abimelech. Then Gal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech, and why should we Shechemites be subject to him? Insist he Jerubbaal's son, and insist Zebul his deputy. Serve the family of Hamar, Shechem's father. Why should we serve Abimelech? If only this people were under my command, then I would get rid of him. I would say to Abimelech, call out your whole army." When Zebul, the governor of the city, heard that Gal, son of Ebed, said, he was very angry. Under cover, he sent messengers to Abimelech, saying, "Gal, son of Ebed, and his clan have come to Shechem and are stirring up the city against you. Now then, during the night, you and your men should come and lie in wait in the fields. In the morning at sunrise, advance against the city. When Gal and his men come out against you, seize the opportunity to attack them." So Abimelech and all his troops set out by night and took up concealed positions near Shechem in 4 companies. Now Gal, son of Ebed, had gone out and was standing at the entrance of the city gate just as Abimelech and his troops came out from their hiding places. When Gal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains." Zebul replied, "You mistake the shadows of the mountains for men." But Gal spoke up again, "Look, people are coming down from the central hill, and a company is coming from the direction of the diviner's tree." Then Zebul said to him, "Where is your big talk now, you who said, 'Who is Abimelech that we should be subject to him?' Aren't these the men who you ridiculed? Go out and fight them." So Gal led out the citizens of Shechem and fought Abimelech. Abimelech chased him all the way to the entrance of the gate, and many were killed as they fled. Then Abimelech stayed in Arumah, and Zebul drove Gal and his clan out of Shechem. The next day, the people of Shechem went out to the fields, and this was reported to Abimelech. So he took his men, divided them into 3 companies, and set an ambush in the fields. When he saw the people coming out of the city, he rose to attack them. Abimelech and the companies with him rushed forward to a position at the entrance of the city gate. The 2 companies attacked those in the field, and struck them down. All day, Abimelech pressed his attack against the city until he had captured it and killed its people. Then he destroyed the city and scattered salt over it. On hearing this, the citizens in the tower of Shechem went into the stronghold of the temple of El Bereth. When Abimelech heard that they had assembled there, he and all his men went up to Mount Zalmon. He took an axe and cut off some branches, which he lifted up to his shoulders. He ordered the men with him, "Quick, do what you have seen me do." So all the men cut branches and followed Abimelech. They piled them against a stronghold and set it on fire with the people still inside. So all the people in the tower of Shechem, about 1,000 men and women, also died. Next, Abimelech went to Thebez and besieged it and captured it. Inside the city, however, was a strong tower, to which all the men and women, all the people of the city, had fled. They had locked themselves in and climbed up to the tower roof. Abimelech went to the tower and attacked it. But as he approached the entrance to the tower to set it on fire, a woman dropped an upper millstone on his head and cracked his skull. Hurriedly, he called to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me, so that they cannot say a woman killed me." So his servant ran him through, and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. Thus God repaid the wickedness that Abimelech had done to his father by murdering his 70 brothers. God also made their people of Shechem pay for all their wickedness. The curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, came on them.
Judges 10. Después de Abimelech se levantó para librar a Israel Tola, hijo de Fua, hijo de Dodo, varón de Isaacar, el cual habitaba en Samir en el monte de Ifrán. Y juzgó a Israel 23 años y murió y fue sepultado en Samir. Tras él se levantó Jair Galadita, el cual juzgó a Israel 22 años. Este tuvo 30 hijos que cabalgaban sobre 30 asnos y tenían 30 ciudades que se llaman las ciudades de Air hasta hoy, las cuales están en la tierra de Galad. Y murió Jair y fue sepultado en Camón. Pero los hijos de Israel volvieron a hacer lo malo ante los ojos de Jehová. Y sirvieron a los Baales y a Astarot, a los dioses de Siria y a los dioses de Sidón, a los dioses de Moab, a los dioses de los hijos de Amón y a los dioses de los filisteos, y dejaron a Jehová y no le sirvieron. Y se encendió la ira de Jehová contra Israel, y los entregó en mano de los filisteos y en mano de los hijos de Amón, los cuales oprimieron y quebrantaron a los hijos de Israel en aquel tiempo 18 años, y todos los hijos de Israel que estaban al otro lado de Jordán, en la tierra de Amorreo que está en Galad. Y los hijos de Amón pasaron el Jordán para hacer también guerra contra Judá y contra Benjamín y la casa de Efraín, y fue afligado Israel en gran manera. Entonces los hijos de Israel clamaron a Jehová diciendo: nosotros hemos pecado contra ti, ¿por qué hemos dejado a nuestro Dios y servido a los Baales? Y Jehová respondió a los hijos de Israel: no había sido oprimidos de Egipto, de los amoreros y de los amonitas y de los filisteos, de los de Sidón, de Amalec y de Maón, y clamando a mí no os libré de sus manos. Mas vosotros me habías dejado y habías servido a dioses ajenos, por tanto yo no os libraré más. Andar y clamar a los dioses que os habías elegido, que os libren ellos en el tiempo de vuestra aflicción. Y los hijos de Israel respondieron a Jehová: hemos pecado, haz tú con nosotros como bien te parezca, solo te rogamos que nos libres en este día. Y quitaron de entre sí los dioses ajenos y sirvieron a Jehová. Y él fue angustiado a causa de la aflicción de Israel. Entonces se juntaron los hijos de Amón y acamparon en Galad. Se juntaron asimismo los hijos de Israel y acamparon en Mizpa. Y los príncipes y el pueblo de Galad dijeron el uno a otro, ¿quién comenzará la batalla contra los hijos de Amón? Será caudillo sobre todos los que habitan en Galad.
Judges chapter 11. Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior. His father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when they were grown up, they drove Jephthah away. You are not going to get any inheritance in our family, they said, because you are the son of another woman. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a gang of scoundrels gathered around him and followed him. Sometime later, when the Ammonites were fighting against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. Come, they said, be our commander so we can fight the Ammonites. Jephthah said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? The elders of Gilead said to him, nevertheless, we are turning to you now. Come with us to fight the Ammonites, and you will be head over all of us who live in Gilead. Jephthah answered, suppose you take me back to fight the Ammonites and the Lord gives them to me. Will I really be your head? The elders of Gilead replied, the Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. So Jephthah went with the elders to Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the Ammonite king with the question, what do you have against me that you have attacked my country? The king of the Ammonites answered, Jephthah's messengers, when Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peacefully. Jephthah sent back messengers to the Ammonite king, saying, this is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. But when they came out of Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and on to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, give us permission to go through your country. But the king of Edom would not listen. They sent also to the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel stayed in Kadesh. Next, they traveled through the wilderness, skirted the lands of Edom and Moab, passed along the eastern side of the country of Moab, and camped on the other side on the Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was its border. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, let us pass through your country to our own place. Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. He mustered all his troops and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. Then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and his whole army into Israel's hand, and they defeated them. Israel took over all the land of the Amorites who lived in that country, capturing all of them from Arnon to the Jabbok and from the desert to the Jordan. Now, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people Israel, what right have you to take it over? Will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Are you any better than Balak, son of Zipporah, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? Or 300 years Israel occupied Heshbon, Aroer, the surrounding settlements, and all the towns along the Arnon? Why didn't you retake them during that time? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. The king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to this message Jephthah sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. He crossed Gilead and Manasseh, passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he advanced against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, Whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." Then Jephthah went over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into his hand. He devastated 20 towns from Aurora to the vicinity of Minnith, as far as Abel Keramim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. Then Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him, but his daughter, dancing to the sound of the timbrels. She was the only child. Except for her, he had neither son nor daughter. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh no, my daughter, you have brought me down, and I am devastated. I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." "My father," she replied, "you have given your word to the Lord? Do to me just as you promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request," she said. "Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry." "You may go," he said, and he let her go for 2 months. She and her friends went into the hills and wept because she would never marry. After the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin. From this comes the Israelite tradition that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite.
Judges 12. Entonces se reunieron los varones de Efraín y pasaron hacia el norte y dijeron a Jephté: ¿Por qué fuiste a hacer guerra contra los hijos de Amón y no nos llamaste para que fuéramos contigo? Nosotros quemaremos tu casa contigo. Y Jephté les respondió: Yo y mi pueblo teníamos una gran contienda con los hijos de Amón, y os llamé, y yo no me defendisteis de su mano. Viendo pues que no me defendías, arrisqué mi vida y pasé contra los hijos de Amón, y Jehová me los entregó, porque pues habías subió hoy contra mí para pelear conmigo. Entonces reunió Jephté a todos los varones de Galad y peleó contra Efraín, y los de Galad derrotaron a Efraín, porque habían dicho: Vosotros sois fugitivos de Efraín, vosotros los galaditas en medio de Efraín y de Manases. Y los galaditas tomaron los vados de Jordán y a los de Efraín. Y aconteció que cuando decían los fugitivos de Efraín: quiero pasar, los de Galad les preguntaban: ¿eres tú Afratío? Si él respondía: no. Entonces le decían: ahora pues, di Shibolet, y él decía Sibolet porque no podía pronunciarlo correctamente. Entonces le echaban mano y le degollaban junto a los vados de Jordán. Y murieron entonces de los de Efraín 42,000. Y Jephté juzgó a Israel 6 años, y murió Jephté Galadita, y fue sepultado en una de las ciudades de Galad. Después él juzgó a Israel, Isván de Belén, y cual tuvo 30 hijos y 30 hijas, las cuales casó fuera, y tomó de fuera 30 hijas para sus hijos, y juzgó a Israel 7 años. Y murió Ibzán, y fue sepultado en Belén. Después de él juzgó a Israel Hilón, Zabulonita, de el cual juzgó a Israel 10 años. Y murió Hilón, Zabulonita, y fue sepultado en Ajalón, en la tierra de Zabulón. Después del juzgó a Israel Abodón, hijo de Hilil, Pirontonita. Tuvo 40 hijos y 30 nietos que cabalgaban sobre 70 asnos, y juzgó a Israel 8 años. Y murió Abdón, hijo de Hilel, Piratonita y fue sepultado en Piratón en la tierra de Efraín en